we have to be very honest with ourselves. I mean, we've got over 68% of fellow citizens who support Medicare for all. 46% of Republicans, 85% of Democrats do, and yet big pharmaceutical companies, big private insurance companies, the donors still dictate the destiny of policy. Now, people are not stupid in this regard. I mean, the distinctive features of a decline of an empire: military overreach, 53 cents of every dollar is going to the military, 53 cents of every dollar in the city of Chicago goes to the police. Militarism domestically, militarism abroad. But at the same time, you say to yourself, well, the people themselves are moving in a progressive direction. Brother Ben is right, but there's no translation. That's why we didn't hear enough serious progressive voices during the spectacle. Because you've got this big money still rendering captive so many of those in the Democratic Party, and they want to speak and give a lip service to justice, but there's no real substance there in terms of sustaining an attack on poverty, sustaining attack on the mass incarceration system and the new Jim Crow, sustaining a redistribution of wealth downward. You can't talk about racism if you don't talk about black people having access to wealth. It could be reparations. It could be redistribution. We have to have access to wealth and income. And this is true for black, for brown. This is true for indigenous peoples. This is true for Asians across the board. And so what has happened, though, Sister Amy, is that we get in this sad spectacle that remains on the surface, and yet the massive suffering and misery that's taking place is intensifying, and we're getting the unraveling of public life with the post office and a whole host of other public institutions, education, and we're getting the inability to envision a substantive alternative to the present, so we end up tied to this nightmarish reality. So yes, a vote for Biden as an anti-fascist vote. That's different than in any way falling prey to illusions. We have to be able to keep our hopes while we kill the illusions. And if we can't walk that tightrope, we're not going to make it as a country.
You had Amy Klobuchar, you had Cory Booker, and so many others, but you didn't have Julian Castro, who we spoke to at the beginning of the week. How is it possible that the only Latinx presidential candidate was not invited when almost all of the rest of them were?
I think it's ridiculous. I mean, when you got the neo-fascist gangster in the White House, he started his whole campaign attacking our precious Mexican brothers and sisters. And here you got a Chicano from Texas who is brilliant and sharp and doesn't get a chance to speak. But Brother Bloomberg does. You say, wait a minute, Michael Bloomberg, the billionaire. I mean, and then Sister Linda Sarsour gets demonized and pushed out because she stands for Palestinians. She's against the vicious Israeli occupation. Biden is talking about human rights. Harris is talking about a coalition of conscience. You can't have a coalition of conscience and talk about human rights if you don't come to terms with precious Palestinians under Israeli occupation. Ain't nothing anti-Jewish about that. In fact, it affirms Jewish values coming out of Hebrew scripture. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. There's talking about justice. So so the role of the lobbies. You got APEC, you got Big Farm, you got big private insurance companies, you got K Street across the board. And these are moral and spiritual issues. These are not tribal. These are not just about identity and group politics. If we can't reach a point of integrity, honesty, and decency, and by spirituality, all I mean is the use of empathy and imagination to envision another future, a better future. If we're unable to do that, we're locked in, and lo and behold, we just slide down a slippery slope to chaos and fascism.